In this video, we'll be looking at the best uncommons in the history of Magic. It'll be a mostly subjective ranking, factoring in tournament performance and bannings. I'll be including every card that has been printed at uncommon in a paper release, but excluding all those that have ever been printed at common. I've already made a video ranking the best commons, so I want to avoid overlap. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can use my discount code SerumVisions to get 5% off your orders from Card Trader Zero. Just follow the link in the video description. With that out of the way, let's dive in. Number 150. Fact or Fiction. 4 mana blue instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. This is an interesting card design, forcing your opponent to try and limit your upside. It's a balancing act that rewards smart decision making. Plenty of games have been decided by questionable splits, and more often than not, the caster ends up with exactly what they need. Upon its release in Invasion, Fact or Fiction significantly changed how blue decks played the game, turning a simple draw effect into a high-stakes psychological battle. Back in that era, it spawned the acronym EOTFOFYL, end of turn, fact or fiction, you lose. Because it's an instant, you can hold up mana for a counterspell on your opponent's turn. If they don't play anything, you cast fact or fiction on their end step. Number 149. Scale up. Infect decks have waned in Modern in recent years, but for a while they rode pretty high, in part thanks to this fearsome pump spell. Paying homage to the classic creature Crawl Worm, Scale Up is a 1 mana green sorcery with, until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a green worm with base power and toughness 6/4. It also has Overload for a cost of 6, though that rarely comes up. The card made lightning-fast infect kills much more consistent. This, plus something like Might of Old Crowser, could steal a game as early as turn 2. Hopefully the archetype gets a few new additions to make it competitive viable once again. Number 148. Witherbloom Charm. Instant, 1 green, 1 black, choose one. You may sacrifice a permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards, or you gain 5 life, or destroy target non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. The removal mode is the most important, capable of hitting many problematic early game cards. The life gain can buy you time against aggro decks, while the sacrifice option slots naturally into a lot of game plans. Turning something like an Orcish Bowmaster Orc army token into 2 fresh cards at instant speed is pretty strong. And even in situations where your opponent removes your creature, you can respond by cashing it in with Witherbloom Charm for value. So you end up with a card that offers efficient removal, decent card advantage, and occasional life gain all in one slot. Number 147. Sterling Grove. 1 green and 1 white for an enchantment that has other enchantments you control have Shroud, and pay 1, sacrifice this enchantment, search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. This is a core component of Legacy and pre-modern Enchantress decks, pulling double duty as both a tutor and a way of protecting your board. It's also arguably the card in the deck that rewards tight sequencing the most, setting up turns where you search for and then deploy the right enchantment often means planning several turns ahead. Number 146. Psychotog. Psychotog hasn't been legacy playable for over a decade, but it remains menacing in pre-modern and has earned its spot in Magic history as one of the most pushed uncommons of its era. It's 1 generic, 1 blue, and 1 black for a 1/2 creature with discard a card. This creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and exile 2 cards from your graveyard. This creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. In the early 2000s, this was one of the best finishers available. Psychotog allowed control players to play a draw-go game, filling their graveyard with counterspells and removal, etc., then dropping a Psychotog and winning the game, often in one swing. Number 145. The Rack. An icon of the game's early years, the Rack is a 1-mana artifact that says, as this artifact enters, choose an opponent. At the beginning of the chosen player's upkeep, this artifact deals X damage to that player, where X is 3 minus the number of cards in their hand. It turns an empty or near empty hand into a stream of damage, giving discard decks a clear path to victory. This artifact has powered entire archetypes across multiple formats and decades, even if it's nowhere near as strong now as it used to be. Nevertheless, it's solid in pre-modern, and some rogue modern brewers even post competitive results with it once in a blue moon. Number 144. Bloodbraid Elf. Another former powerhouse that has been overshadowed in recent years. 2 generic, 1 green, and 1 red for a 3/2 with haste and cascade. In its heyday, Bloodbraid Elf would typically hit cards like Lightning Bolt or Maelstrom Pulse, all while threatening to swing in for damage itself, making it one of the best value plays around. Alongside Tarmogoyf and Liliana of the Veil, it kept Jund near the top of the modern meta for years. Number 143. Memnite. No mana at all for a 1/1. It doesn't do anything flashy on its own, but its value comes from simply existing for free. It helps power out threats like Kappa Cannoneer, it enables Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum, and it aids you in creating drones with Pinnacle Emissary, all while leaving behind a useful chump blocker or a source of chip damage if your opponent's board is clear. Number 142. Soul Guide Lantern. Soul Guide Lantern offers layered graveyard interaction in a single card. It's a 1-mana artifact with, when this artifact enters, exile target card from a graveyard. It also has tap, sacrifice this artifact, exile each opponent's graveyard, and pay 1, tap, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. So the ETB gives you immediate value, while its first activated ability can sweep an entire graveyard when needed. The fact that it exiles only your opponent's graveyards is especially important, making it a clean fit in decks that rely on their own graveyard. On top of that, it has built-in flexibility. If graveyard hate isn't relevant in a given matchup or scenario, you can simply cash it in to draw a card. Number 141. Ashiok, Dream Render. This Ashiok acts as both a silver bullet against specific strategies and a potent mill engine by itself. 3 mana, 5 starting loyalty. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. Then -1 loyalty, target player mills 4 cards, then exile each opponent's graveyard. While the graveyard hate is solid, Ashiok's most devastating feature is preventing opponents from searching their libraries. This shuts off so many cards, like Summoner's Pact, Neoform, and Whir of Invention, as well as fetch lands. Number 140. Dreams of Steel and Oil. Dreams of Steel and Oil is a specialized hand attack spell that serves as a great answer to artifact-heavy and graveyard-reliant strategies. It's a sorcery for 1 black, and it says target opponent reveals their hand, you choose an artifact or creature card from it, then choose an artifact or creature card from their graveyard, exile the chosen cards. It's a great sideboard option in Modern, so much so that some builds of Orzhov Control, Esper Blink, and Necro Dominance even run it in the main deck. Number 139. Risen Reef. Elementals might not be the strongest archetype, but they do boast one of the most powerful tribal payoffs in the whole game in Risen Reef. It's one generic, one green, and one blue for a 1/1 that says, whenever this creature or another elemental you control enters, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. So this creature can wind up drawing you tons of cards and ramping you significantly. Not to mention, it triggers off its own entry, so even if it's immediately removed, it has already replaced itself and potentially ramped you. Number 138. Portable Hole. 1 white mana. When this artifact enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until this artifact leaves the battlefield. Portable Hole earns its place by cleanly answering low-cost permanents that define early turns in most formats, particularly in Modern. It's relevant in a wide range of matchups. The fact that Portable Hole is an artifact that sticks around is important for a variety of synergies as well. Number 137. Tainted Indulgence. This is a strong choice for control-leaning Reanimator shells. It's an instant for 1 blue and 1 black, reading draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. It's a decent way to dig toward whatever you need while putting reanimation targets into your graveyard. There's also the ceiling, where Tainted Indulgence just cleanly draws 2 cards. Hitting 5 distinct mana values in your graveyard isn't trivial in Modern, but Reanimator helps cheat that requirement. Archon of Cruelty, for example, does a lot of heavy lifting itself with its massive cost. Number 136. Ghost Quarter. A land with tap add 1 colorless and tap sacrifice this land, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It's a nice, straightforward piece of land hate. No extra mana required like Field of Ruin, and no conditions to meet like Tectonic Edge. That ease of activation makes it much more flexible. You see the card a lot in competitive Legacy and Vintage, as well as occasionally in modern decks like Eldrazi Ramp. There's also the multiplayer angle to consider. In EDH, Field of Ruin can end up helping the rest of the table by ramping them, which isn't always what you want. In some games, that drawback can come back to bite you, making Ghost Quarter the cleaner and safer option overall. Number 135. Barbarian Ring. The Red Odyssey Threshold land, recently reprinted in Modern Horizons 3. Barbarian Ring can tap to ping you for 1 and add 1 red, and when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it gains pay 1 red, tap, sacrifice Barbarian Ring. It deals 2 damage to any target. This was a nice boost to modern burn decks, turning 1 land slot into a virtual shock, and giving those decks a way to sneak damage through even the most frustrating defenses. In the late game, Barbarian Ring sidesteps counter magic and ignores many of the usual forms of prevention that can stall out burn strategies. It also creates some genuinely scary endgame scenarios. If your opponent is sitting at a low life total and you've got multiple Barbarian Rings in play, then the pressure is constant. In aggressive mono-red decks, the pain of taking 1 damage whenever you tap this for mana is ultimately a small price to pay for having a burn spell attached to your mana base. Number 134. Bolt Wave. Bolt Wave is one of several variations on Lightning Bolt that trade flexibility for focus. In this case, it's 1 red for a sorcery that deals 3 damage to each opponent. It's obviously much worse than Lightning Bolt, but it provides some welcome redundancy. As with Barbarian Ring, the printing of this card hugely helped Modern Burn become viable again. Number 133. Urza's Cave. Urza's Cave is a powerful land tutor that sees a ton of play in Amulet Titan, along with some fringe appearances in Legacy 12-post decks. It's a land with tap add 1 colorless, and pay 3, tap, sacrifice this land, Search your library for a land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This card gives you a lot of options, whether you're grabbing something like Field of the Dead, Dark Depths, or a missing Tron piece. It's both a role player and an enabler, depending on what your deck needs in the moment. Plus, being a cave is relevant for spelunking, while being an Urza's land counts toward Urza's workshop. Number 132, Colossus Hammer. 1 mana to cast, 8 to equip. Equipped creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying. Colossus Hammer is the centerpiece of Modern's Hammer Time strategy, a deck built around cheating this massive +10/+10 equipment onto a creature without paying its hefty equip cost. Cards like Battlefield Improvisation and Sigarda's Aid make that plan possible, letting you suit up a threat instantly and out of nowhere. The deck has dipped in popularity, though it still posts winning records in Magic Online leagues from time to time. Number 131, Flood Pit's Drowner. 2 mana for a 2/1 merfolk with flash and vigilance. It also has, when this creature enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. It also has pay 1 generic and 1 blue, tap, shuffle this creature and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's libraries. That's a lot of text, making this an aggro little body as well as a potential removal spell. Naturally, it immediately slotted into merfolk decks, where it's a neat tempo card. Locking down a creature for 2 turns buys you a crucial window to push through damage, which is exactly how those decks win games. Number 130, Outland Liberator. 2 mana for a 2/2 human werewolf with pay 1, sacrifice this creature, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its backside is a 3/3 with the same ability, plus whenever this creature attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. That's very formidable, but even the front face is good enough. It's a great utility creature, which green decks can easily tutor for to deal with problem permanents. In Legacy, Outland Liberator shows up in Maverick and Dark Depths decks, while in Modern you typically see it in Yawgmoth builds. The only annoying thing about it is the headache that comes with tracking day and night. Number 129, Starfield Shepherd. Starfield Shepherd is 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer that you can warp for 1 generic and 1 white. When it enters, you search your library for a basic plains or a creature with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Because warp exiles the creature at the end of the turn and allows you to recast it later, Starfield Shepherd is a 2-for-1. You get the tutor effect twice, once early for tempo and once late as a 3/2 flying body that refills your hand. Grabbing something like Ragavan or Esper Sentinel and playing it with spare mana can be a huge swing, whether you're grinding out value or applying early pressure. Throw in blink effects and it gets even better. The card is fearsome in Azorius aggro standard decks. In Modern, Azorius Ephemerate and Selesnya aggro decks have begun running it as well. Number 128, Reclamation Sage. 3 mana for a 2/1 elf shaman. When it enters, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Simple but effective. This is one of the go-to creatures for dealing with pesky permanents. Ideally, you're trading up by taking out something much more expensive or more important, but even in a straight exchange with another 3-drop, you still come out ahead because you have a creature left on the battlefield. It's easy to tutor for, has elf and shaman synergy, and if you can reuse it through bounce, blink, or reanimation, it becomes very strong. Number 127, Goblin Ringleader. Goblin Ringleader is a fantastic refueling engine for Goblins decks. For 4 mana, you get a 2/2 with haste, and when this creature enters, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put all Goblin cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is serious card advantage, helping the archetype compete with control decks. If you're running out of steam, the classic move is to use a goblin matron to find a ringleader. You then cast the ringleader to hopefully find more goblins. This makes the deck surprisingly resilient to board wipes, and is one of the main reasons that goblins is one of the premier aggro archetypes in pre-modern. Number 126. Aftermath Analyst. A key piece in Amulet Titan decks, Aftermath Analyst is 2 mana for a 1/2 with when this creature enters, mill 3 cards, and pay 3 generic and 1 green, sacrifice this creature, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. In that archetype, the classic loop involves Lotus Field, Shifting Woodland, or Mirror Pool, and enough mana to copy and sacrifice Analyst with every iteration. This line has made it much easier for Amulet Titan to win off a single Amulet of Vigor, and is one of several reasons that Lotus Field just met the ban hammer. Another big upside is how well Aftermath Analyst dodges traditional interaction. Cards like Solitude were never perfect answers to Primeval Titan, but they still forced you to think carefully about your lines. With Analyst, you can execute your game plan with a lot more security. Number 125. Path to Exile. It's not as popular as it used to be, but Path to Exile remains one of White's best modern legal removal spells, especially in the new Boros land destruction decks. Ramping your opponent is a steep downside, but the capability of hitting almost anything for just 1 mana is worth a lot. Number 124. Boros Charm. One of the most pushed modal spells of all time. 1 red, 1 white, choose 1. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. All of those options are high impact. The face damage made it a burn staple for years. In Commander, the indestructible mode saves you from board wipes. Finally, the double strike enables combat blowouts or surprise lethal attacks. Number 123. Gran. 1 blue for a legendary 1/2. Whenever Gran becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. Non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast as long as there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. This sweet grandma saw immediate play across Standard, Pioneer, and even the odd modern deck. In Standard, she's a pillar of the Is It Lessons archetype. Its game plan revolves around dumping lessons into the graveyard as quickly as possible, and her looting ability plays a crucial role in making that happen. Number 122. Bitter Triumph. Instant for 1 generic and 1 black. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. This card is incredibly popular in Standard and Pioneer, and pops up in Modern and Legacy on occasion. The flexibility is fantastic, and the discard synergy slots nicely into the right build. Almost 1 in 10 Standard decks on MTG Top 8 currently play it. Number 121. Fire Magic. This is something of a side grade to Pyroclasm, which is also great. It's a tiered instant, so for 1 mana it deals 1 damage to each creature, for 3 mana it deals 2 damage to each creature, and for 6 mana it deals 3 damage to each creature. That scaling is very cool. Being able to deploy a 1 damage board wipe for a single mana is far more impactful than it might initially appear. In Modern, Fire Magic covers scenarios that older options struggle with. You can pick off a turn 1 Ragavan or Ocelot Pride on the draw before they ever connect, something Pyroclasm simply can't do. The other crucial advantage is that Fire Magic operates at instant speed. That single detail dramatically increases its ceiling, and then obviously into the mid and late game you have the option of potentially dealing more damage with it. Number 120. Steel Shaper's Gift. Sorcery for 1 white. Search your library for an equipment card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. This may only work in a narrow slice of decks, but the reliability it provides in those builds for just a single mana is incredibly hard to match. It's obviously crucial in Hammer Time for fetching Colossus Hammer, but can also grab silver bullets in a pinch. Number 119. Break the Ice. Sorcery costing double black. Destroy target land that is snow or could produce colorless mana. Then, Break the Ice also has an overload cost for 4 generic and 2 black. It's a great sideboard card for hitting Tron lands, Ugin's Labyrinth, Urza's Saga, Eldrazi Temple, Nykthos, Inkmoth Nexus, Boseiju Who Shelters All, Phyrexian Tower, Rishadan Port, Field of the Dead, Cavern of Souls, Pain Lands, and Cloudpost. In Modern, Necrodominance and some Reanimator decks run it. Number 118. Violent Urge. A terrifying game ender for blue-red prowess decks, Violent Urge is a 1-mana red instant reading target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Delirium, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. The card really hinges on enabling Delirium, but once you do, the payoff is absolutely worth it. For a single mana, you get a combat trick that can effectively double the damage output of your best creature, and even when it doesn't immediately close the game, granting double strike is often better than a simple power boost, since it also lets your creature dominate combat and survive situations it otherwise wouldn't. The good news is that turning on Delirium isn't especially difficult. In a typical game, you can get there naturally pretty fast. Cracking a fetch land, casting a lightning bolt, and trading resources back and forth already puts you most of the way. With just a bit of setup, Violent Urge becomes a highly efficient and dangerous tool. Number 117. No More Lies. No More Lies is a soft counter with the added bonus of exiling whatever it answers, 1 white, 1 blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. This is a solid rate for a counterspell that can hit creature and non-creature spells alike. The exile is great against the likes of Flage or Past in Flames, and in the early turns it usually plays like a hard counter. In Modern, this card often crops up in Jeskai Blink and 4-color control decks. Number 116. Wastscape Battle Mage. This is a useful little guy in Eldrazi decks. Wastscape Battle Mage is 1 generic and 1 colorless for a 2/2, with kicker for a cost of 1 green and or 1 generic and 1 blue. When you cast it, if it was kicked with its green kicker, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. When you cast it, if it was kicked with its blue kicker, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. The Battle Mage usually has a useful mode at the right moment, bouncing creatures here, exiling artifacts or enchantments there. It's a compact toolbox that can potentially answer multiple threats at once, all while leaving a 2/2 body on the board. Number 115. Shoot the Sheriff. Shoot the Sheriff falls into that familiar category of 2-mana black removal with a built-in restriction. It's an instant reading destroy target non-outlaw creature. Assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws. That limitation makes it a bit of a metagame gamble. In many matchups, it lines up well, since a lot of the format's key threats don't fall under that type, but there are definitely spots where it can come up short, missing staples like Ragavan, for instance. Still, Shoot the Sheriff is usually a solid pick. Number 114. Marauding Mako. Marauding Mako is one of the newer payoffs for discard-based decks. It's 1 red for a 1/1 with cycling 2, and whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature. With cards like Burning Inquiry and Faithless Looting in the mix, it doesn't take much to grow Marauding Mako into a real threat. Even a single Burning Inquiry can push it out of range of common 3 damage removal, which is a nice break point to keep in mind. What really elevates Marauding Mako though in this archetype is the extra consistency it provides. Between it and Flameblade Adept, you now have multiple 1-mana threats that can quickly snowball if left unchecked. That redundancy makes your aggressive starts far more reliable. Number 113, Reprieve, the White Remand. Reprieve is 1 generic and 1 white for an instant with return target spell to its owner's hand, draw a card. It functions less like a control tool and more like a tempo play. It doesn't permanently deal with the threat, but it forces your opponent to spend their mana all over again. If they tap out for a 4-mana spell and you reprieve it for 2 mana, you've effectively stolen their entire turn. Blue decks typically prefer hard counters that deal with a spell permanently, while Reprieve is all about buying time. A bunch of modern decks make use of it, though right now it seems most effective in Boros land destruction. Number 112, Bottomless Pit. Enchantment for 1 generic and 2 black. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random. Bottomless Pit steadily grinds down both players' hands, forcing random discards instead of letting anyone pick and choose what they lose. There's definitely a bit of variance baked into it, but that unpredictability is part of the appeal. In decks that don't mind pitching cards, or even actively want them in the graveyard, Bottomless Pit can become a powerful and surprisingly punishing engine. Nowadays, you most often find it in pre-modern rack decks. Number 111, Sheltered by Ghosts. 2 mana white aura. When this aura enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this aura leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. Sheltered by Ghosts functions like an Oblivion Ring while also turning one of your creatures into a much stronger threat. In aggressive decks, the buffs alone can justify the card. Slap it onto a creature that's already formidable, and it becomes harder to remove while also swinging life totals in your favor. Even on defense, a life-linking blocker can make combat far more awkward for your opponent. But then there's the removal aspect, which is where the card really stands out. 2 mana for a non-land permanent exile is about as efficient as it gets. That said, it does come with a notable drawback. Unlike traditional Oblivion Ring style effects, you need a creature in play to make it work at all. If you're behind on board or just looking for a clean answer, that dependency can make it a bit clunkier than other options. Number 110, Dredge's Insight. This enchantment has quickly become a staple for in Golgari Yawgmoth lists in Modern and Igra combo in Pioneer. It costs 2 mana and says, whenever 1 or more artifact and or creature cards leave your graveyard, you gain 1 life. When this enchantment enters, mill 4 cards. You may put an artifact, creature, or land card from among the milled cards into your hand. Unlike many similar effects, its life gain isn't capped at once per turn. That's a huge deal. Once you assemble a loop with cards like Young Wolf and Yawgmoth, the Insight effectively cancels out the life loss, letting you keep drawing cards indefinitely. In a sense, it's both setup and payoff, digging toward your combo pieces and making them more effective. Number 109, Untimely Malfunction. Untimely Malfunction has been a fantastic addition to Red's sideboard toolkit. For just 1 generic and 1 red, it presents you with a Swiss Army knife of options. Choose 1, destroy target artifact. change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. Mono red decks have always struggled to protect their threats, so having access to a strong redirect effect like this is a big deal. It gives red a way to interact cheaply on the stack and turn opposing spells to its advantage. Finally, shutting down blockers can sometimes steal a game out of nowhere. Number 108, Damping Sphere, a cheap and versatile sideboard card. 2 mana artifact, says if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 colorless mana instead of any other type and amount. On top of that, it also has each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. The first ability hoses Tron, Eldrazi, Nykthos, and Cabal Coffers decks, and also hoses the Ravnica Bounce lands and Lotus Field. The second static ability is brutal against strategies like Storm, but it's also very annoying for Neoform and Cascade decks, and really anybody that's trying to cast more than 1 spell per turn. It's great because it hates on multiple archetypes, while only taking up a single sideboard slot. Number 106, Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze is the premier Storm win condition for blue decks. It's one of the most efficient ways to mill an entire library in a single go. Costing 1 generic and 1 blue, it's an instant that says target player mills 3 cards, Storm. Depending on your deck list, you can either use it to deck your opponent or mill yourself to enable graveyard shenanigans. In Legacy, it's often the win con of High Tide decks, while in Vintage, it's paired with Underworld Breach, allowing you to repeatedly cast it. Number 105, Crystal Vein. This land, originally from Mirage, has tap add 1 colorless, as well as tap, sacrifice, add 2 colorless. This makes it one of the best soul lands available, coming in just behind the heavy hitters like Ancient Tomb and City of Traitors. Crystal Vein smooths out your early turns and gives you immediate access to mana. Even if you rarely end up sacrificing it for the burst of double mana, having that option in your back pocket adds a meaningful upside. In pre-modern, Crystal Vein powers Tinker Fling decks, while in Legacy it speeds up Cascade decks. Number 104, Lantern of Insight. The namesake of Lantern Control. This 1 mana artifact says, players play with the top card of their libraries revealed. It also has, sacrifice this artifact, target player shuffles. On its own, the informational edge you get from seeing the top of your opponent's deck is small, but when you pair it with mill effects like Codex Shredder, Ghoulcaller's Bell, and Pixis of Pandemonium, that information becomes very powerful. You're basically deciding whether your opponent gets to keep their draws. With Lantern and a few of these pieces online, you can effectively filter every card your opponent would draw, removing anything that actually matters. As the lock tightens, your opponent is gradually cut off from anything good. With enough artifacts in play, you can keep them from ever drawing a relevant card again, slowly grinding them out, and eventually winning by milling them entirely. Number 103. Grinding Station. This artifact from 5th Dawn is a potent combo engine. It costs 2 mana and has tap, sacrifice an artifact, target player mills 3 cards, and whenever an artifact enters, you may untap this artifact. That lines up perfectly with Underworld Breach, where escaping a spell requires exiling 3 cards from your graveyard. If the card you're escaping is a 0 mana artifact, you can immediately replay it, untap Grinding Station, and do it all over again, quickly churning through your entire deck. This makes the card a controlled self-mill machine. This proved so strong that Underworld Breach was banned in Modern, and yet grinding station decks still exist on the edges of the meta. Number 102, Wear and Tear. Wear and Tear has been a go-to sideboard option ever since it was printed, offering answers to 2 key permanent types in a single slot. It's a split card that combines Disenchant and Shatter, but the Fuse ability means you can cast both halves at once, occasionally turning this into a 2-for-1. That kind of flexibility is incredibly valuable, especially in formats where sideboard space is tight. In Modern, countless decks run Wear and Tear, including Boros Energy, Ruby Storm, Red Belcher, Domain Zoo, and even some builds of Blue-Red Prowess and Jeskai Failure. It even holds up in Commander, where there's almost always a mana rock worth removing, alongside high-impact enchantments like Doubling Season. Number 101, Sheoldred's Edict. A power-crept diabolic edict. 1 generic and 1 black for an instant that says, choose 1, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice, each opponent sacrifices a creature token of their choice, each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker of their choice. Being able to specify the type of permanent your opponent has to sacrifice dramatically limits their options, making it far more likely they'll lose the exact creature you're trying to deal with, all without actually targeting it. Unsurprisingly, the card quickly found homes in Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy. Number 100, Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor is a unique card, a 1/1 creature that's also a forest land. Of course, that dual nature comes with drawbacks. You have to spend a land drop to play it, and because it's a creature, it suffers from summoning sickness, so it can't tap for mana the turn it enters unless it has haste. Even so, the flexibility of being both a land and a creature at all times has made it a staple in various formats since its release. Firstly, creature tutors can find it, and so can land tutors. That overlap opens up a lot of lines of play, most famously the synergy with Green Sun's Zenith. Being able to pay a single green mana to fetch Dryad Arbor on turn 1 effectively sets you up for 3 mana on turn 2. The Arbor also enables clever defensive plays, like fetching it in response to an edict effect to save a key creature, something Boggle's decks relied on heavily back in the day. More recently, Dryad Arbor has gained a new partner in Badger Mole Cub, which allows it to tap for double mana. Number 99, Flicker Wisp. 3 mana for a 3/1 flying elemental. When it enters, exile another target permanent, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It's a versatile synergy piece that pops up across multiple formats. In aggressive decks, Flicker Wisp can temporarily remove a key blocker and clear the way for damage. In more synergy-driven builds, it can reset one of your permanents and re-trigger valuable ETB effects. Importantly, it can target any permanent. That includes lands, which opens up a range of niche but powerful interactions depending on the situation, like blinking a double-sided land in order to get its front face onto the battlefield. Flicker Wisp offers all this on a respectable evasive body. Consequently, you see it a lot in Modern Failure decks and Legacy Death and Taxes. Number 98, Planner Genesis. Planner Genesis is a powerful utility spell from MH3, kind of like a hybrid of Growth Spiral and Impulse. It's 1 green and 1 blue for an instant that says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't, put a card from among them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it offers either ramp or card selection, all at instant speed, so you can cast it on your opponent's end step. Digging 4 cards deep is very solid, earning Planner Genesis a slot in Modern Allosaurus combo decks. It's one of the most important cards in that archetype, tying much of the strategy together. Number 97, Skateboard. Skateboard quickly replaced Lava Spur boots as the go-to equipment to tutor up with Urza's Saga. It's 1 mana, costs 1 to equip, and says equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has haste. On top of that, Skateboard has, when this equipment enters, tap target permanent. The main benefit of this is in helping you push through damage by tapping down blockers. The combination of tapping and granting haste means you get Skateboard down, play a creature, and then hit your opponent with a burst of damage out of nowhere. Number 96. Strike It Rich. Strike It Rich is a unique mana investment spell from Modern Horizons 2 that serves as a specialized tool for several combo decks. It's 1 red for a sorcery that creates a treasure token, and it has flashback for a cost of 2 generic and 1 red. Strike It Rich allows aggro or combo decks to play a 3 mana spell on turn 2. This speed is often enough to get under an opponent's counterspells. In Modern, Strike It Rich plays a key role in both Storm and Red Belcher. The flashback is also relevant in both decks, not just for mana generation, but also to up the Storm count for both Grapeshot and Storm Scale Scion. Number 95. Stern Scolding. 1 mana blue instant. Counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. Being restricted to creature spells limits how broadly you can rely on it, but within that lane, Stern Scolding is still excellent. Against creature-heavy decks, it buys you crucial tempo, and it's particularly strong at picking off key combo pieces that tend to have low power. It's good enough that you could justify running a copy in the main deck, especially in metas where cards like Balustrade Spy or Thassa's Oracle are central to winning the game. In Modern, Scolding hits so many relevant creatures, including Solitude, Ragavan, Felia, Ral Monsoon Mage, Arcbound Ravager, Slickshot Showoff, Psychic Frog, and Emperor of Bones. It's highly specific, but devastatingly effective in a world dominated by small, high-value creatures. Number 94. Faithful Mending. An Azorius spin on Faithless Looting. Faithful Mending costs 1 white and 1 blue and reads, you gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Then it has flashback for a cost of 1 generic, 1 white, and 1 blue. The card has quietly become one of the best graveyard enablers in Modern, showing up across a range of archetypes. Instant speed turns out to be a huge upgrade, and the life gain is far more relevant than it perhaps appears. You mostly see it in Modern, powering Esper instant reanimator decks. Number 93. Disciple of Freyalise. Disciple of Bolas is still a strong card, and in green it arguably gets even better. On its front, Disciple of Freyalise is a 3/3 creature for 6 that says when it enters, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. Its backside, meanwhile, is a land that can tap for green and enters untapped if you pay 3 life. The Disciple sees legacy play in Oops All Spells decks, where it can be fetched with Summoner's Pact if you need it as a land. The same line works in modern Neobrand decks, where the Disciple is fantastic. It's essentially a land that counts as a green card for Allosaurus Rider, while also presenting niche but powerful interactions, like cheating it in with Ghalta Stampede Tyrant, then sacrificing Ghalta to draw 12 cards and gain 12 life. Number 92. Witch Enchanter. A white MDFC land from MH3. The front face is a 2/2 creature for 4 with, when it enters, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. It's a disenchant that you can search for with things like Recruiter of the Guard, while only using up a land slot in your deck list. In Modern, you see Witch Enchanter in Boros Aggro, Jeskai Blink, and Landless Belcher, while in Legacy it's played in Death and Taxes and Initiative Hate Bear. Those latter decks like to play it as a land and then blink it with Flicker Wisp so it comes back as a creature. Number 91. Cling to Dust. Instant for 1 black. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, you gain 3 life. Otherwise, you draw a card. You can also escape it by paying 3 generic and 1 black, and exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard. Cling to Dust is useful in many situations, whether that's hitting a Conflagrate, a Snapcaster Mage target, or Flage. The life gain can also matter against aggro. Most of the time, Cling to Dust trades 1 for 1, but it does have the potential to generate extra value if the game goes long and you have the mana and graveyard resources to escape it. One of its biggest strengths is that it still has value even when discarded or milled. Decks that use the graveyard as a resource can make excellent use of it. Number 90. Punishing Fire. 2 mana instant, Punishing Fire deals 2 damage to any target. Whenever an opponent gains life, you may pay 1 red. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. The card's power comes from pairing it with Grove of the Burn Willows. The life gain you give your opponent with Grove becomes an upside when it keeps bringing Punishing Fire back to your hand, letting you grind them down with a steady stream of damage and interaction, continuously picking off their small creatures and eventually whittling down their life total. Loam decks in Legacy continue to run the card, and it remains banned in Modern, though a lot of players believe it would be fine for the format. Number 89. Spelunking. This card has basically become Amulet of Vigor copies 5 through 8. It's 2 generic and 1 green for an enchantment with, when this enchantment enters, draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you put a cave onto the battlefield this way, you gain 4 life. However, Spelunking's real power lies in its static ability. Lands you control enter untapped. That effect hugely speeds you up, making your other ramp spells more effective and your land plays more efficient. It turns slow lands like the bounce lands into immediate mana sources. In Amulet Titan, Spelunking is a combo piece that also cantrips you, can potentially ramp you, and even gains you life sometimes if you drop an Urza's Cave with it. Impressive stuff. Number 88. Lightning Greaves. This icon from Mirrodin costs 2 mana to cast and 0 to equip, and grants the equipped creature both haste and shroud. That's about as efficient as it gets when it comes to protecting your commander. No other equipment offers that level of speed, and it's earned its reputation because of it. It's the kind of early game play that immediately draws groans, especially when it follows a soul ring and sets up an early commander with protection and the ability to swing in immediately. That game plan is so strong that Lightning Greaves currently appears in a quarter of all decks on EDH Rec. Number 87. Static Prison. Enchantment costing 1 white. When this enchantment enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. You get 2 energy counters. At the beginning of your first main phase, sacrifice this enchantment unless you pay 1 energy. Static Prison offers a 1 mana Banishing Light that requires an ongoing energy cost. It's a great tool in Boros energy decks, usually sticking around far longer than it has any right to, functioning as an incredibly efficient removal option for a fraction of the usual cost. Those decks usually run a singleton copy to deal with problematic cards their other removal spells like Throbbing Charm and Galvanic Discharge can't hit. Number 86. Field of Ruin. This land can tap for colorless mana, or you can pay 2, tap and sacrifice it to destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls and make each player search for a basic. Land destruction has been toned down significantly over time, and Field of Ruin is a perfect example of that shift. It's effective at keeping problematic lands in check, but it never crosses the line into feeling oppressive. If your deck skimps on basics, it can absolutely punish you, but in most cases it plays out as a fair, balanced answer. The card is good in many environments, and recently a Boros land destruction deck has gained steam in Modern, powered by this and its cousin Demolition Field. Number 85. Haywire Might. Look at this little guy, what a role player. Haywire Might is a 1/1 artifact creature for 1 that says, when this creature dies, you gain 2 life. It also has pay 1 green, sacrifice this creature, exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. That's a cheap price to pay for a very useful effect, giving the Might a home in a range of strategies. Decks that care about cheap artifacts or creatures hitting the graveyard get extra value, and being searchable with cards like Urza's Saga or Trinket Mage is a huge plus. Number 84. Glaring Fleshraker. Glaring Fleshraker is both a mana engine and a win condition wrapped into one compact body. Every time you cast a colorless spell, it rewards you with both mana and damage, meaning that once you start chaining spells together, the card quickly snowballs. Sure, it does nothing by itself, meaning it sucks if it immediately eats a removal spell, but if left unchecked, it can totally run away with games. Pair it with something like Kozilek's Command and things escalate fast. Fleshraker helps generate the mana to cast the command, while the Scion-producing mode feeds directly back into Fleshraker's damage output. It's no surprise then that the card has found a home as a primary win condition in colorless strategies, particularly in combo-focused builds. Whether it's fueling Mystic Forge-style engines or Brood-scale combo, or simply presenting Eldrazi aggro decks with another angle of attack, Glaring Fleshraker turns otherwise intricate setups into clean, rapid kills. Number 83. City of Brass. Here's where things start getting technical. City of Brass was originally printed in Arabian Nights, a set with a rarity system unlike the one we know today. It had no rare sheet, only a common sheet and an uncommon sheet. But different uncommons were printed at different rarities within that sheet. Uncommon 2 was the rarest rarity in Arabian Nights, followed by Uncommon 3 and Uncommon 4. Nowadays, Scryfall classes Uncommon 2 Arabian Nights cards as rares, while the other uncommons are still counted as uncommons. At the time, City of Brass appeared at Uncommon 3, so it qualifies for this list. One of the original 5-color lands, City of Brass has tap, add 1 mana of any color, and whenever this land becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. Spending a life for each mana isn't trivial, but in return you get flawless color fixing. This means that City of Brass is best suited to 4 or 5 color decks, where consistency matters more than anything else. In fact, some faster strategies are perfectly happy to functionally start the game at a lower life total if it means their mana works exactly as needed from turn 1. Unsurprisingly, this land sees a ton of commander play, appearing in 7.65% of all decks on EDHREC. Number 82. Stubborn Denial. Modern Zoo deck's counterspell of choice. Stubborn Denial is 1 blue for an instant that says, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, counter that spell instead. This means it's potent in any deck that can put large creatures onto the battlefield early, such as Death's Shadow, Stifle Naught, or Murktide. Being able to play your threats and keep just 1 mana open to cast Protection or Disruption can be the difference between winning and losing. Number 81. Crystalline Sliver. 2/2 for 1 blue and 1 white. All slivers have Shroud, one of the very best slivers. Crystalline Sliver shuts down targeted removal entirely, letting your board of synergistic threats stick around and actually do what they're meant to do. Even some non-tribal pre-modern decks run it simply because it's a 2/2 that can't be targeted. Number 80. Isochron Scepter. This classic artifact from Mirrodin costs 2 mana and has imprint, so when it enters, you may exile an instant card with mana value 2 or less from your hand. Then it has pay 2, tap. You may copy the exiled card. If you do, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. There's always something appealing about turning a spell into a repeatable effect, and that's a big part of why this card has held its value. You can pull off all kinds of tricks with it, like going infinite with Dramatic Reversal, soft locking your opponent with Auram's Chant, repeatedly hitting them with a counterspell, or casting Consult the Star Charts every turn. At the same time, that power comes with a real downside. To get Isochron Scepter up and running, you're effectively investing 2 cards, both the artifact and the spell you imprint onto it. That opens you up to a painful blowout. If your opponent removes the scepter, you've just traded 2 resources for one of theirs. It's a classic high-risk, high-reward setup. Nevertheless, the scepter continues to achieve competitive results today in various blue-white and Jeskai modern control shells. Number 79. Smallpox. Smallpox was printed in Time Spiral as a throwback to the Ice Age classic Pox, offering a cheaper and more limited version of that card's effect. It's 2 black for a sorcery reading, each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature of their choice, then sacrifices a land of their choice. For years, it's been a centerpiece of legacy Pox decks, where it pressures multiple angles of the game all at once, cast it early, and it can buy you critical time. It's a vicious resource denial tool that you can make even stronger by breaking the symmetry. With discard outlets and little to no creatures, you'll always come out on top. Crucially, because it forces a sacrifice, Smallpox is good at handling creatures with hexproof, ward, or indestructible. Number 78. Talaria West. Another cool design from Future Sight. Talaria West stapled the transmute mechanic onto a land, meaning it can tutor for any card with mana value 0. This makes it a bit of a strange case. You usually don't want to treat it like a normal land, or even count it as one in deck building. Its real value comes from transmute, letting you search for powerful cards like Summoner's Pact, or Black Lotus, or Moxes. In Modern, it shines in Amulet Titan, while some legacy decks use it to grab pieces like Lion's Eye Diamond. Crucially, because Transmute is an ability, Talaria West sidesteps most counterspells. Number 77. Sylvan Scrying. For just 1 and a green, Sylvan Scrying lets you search your library for any land and put it into your hand. It first made a name for itself back in Mirrodin Block Constructed, helping power early Cloudpost strategies. Since then, it's been a reliable way to find key lands across various formats, typically Dark Depths, Tron pieces, or even Cabal coffers and Lotus Field. In addition, it can also be used to fetch utility lands, like Boseiju Who Endures or Bajuka Bog. As long as decks rely on specific lands to function, Sylvan Scrying will remain a reliable enabler and a regular presence in competitive play. Number 76. Boomerang Basics. 1 blue for a sorcery lesson. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you controlled that permanent, draw a card. Once again, this might look a little unassuming. Blue has no shortage of bounce spells, and this one being sorcery speed is a real downside. You can't use it to mess with combat or disrupt your opponent mid-turn. What makes it stand out though is the second clause. If you target your own permanent, Boomerang Basics replaces itself by drawing a card. That turns it from a simple tempo play into a value engine. You can generate card advantage while reusing powerful ETB effects, and the rate is what really pushes it over the top. Doing all of that for a single blue mana is incredibly efficient, making it a deceptively strong option in decks that can take advantage of that synergy. Consequently, the card shows up in blue-red strategies across Standard, Pioneer, Modern, and Legacy. Number 75. Neoform, the linchpin of its namesake deck. Neoform is a sorcery for 1 green and 1 blue, reading, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value, put that card onto the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, then shuffle. The core idea is to pitch 2 green cards to cast Allosaurus Rider for free, then immediately convert it into something far more threatening using Neoform or Eldritch Evolution. That usually means tutoring up a powerhouse like Grizzlebrand or Atraxa Grand Unifier. From there, you refill your hand, giving yourself the resources to either protect your position or set up another combo turn. You've got a massive must-answer threat, forcing your opponent to react immediately or risk falling hopelessly behind, all while threatening to drop another fatty soon. Number 74. Imperial Recruiter. This creature tutor on a stick was initially an uncommon when it first appeared in Portal 3 Kingdoms. It's 2 generic and 1 red for a creature that says when it enters, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. In Legacy, it's most often used to find Painter's Servant, though it can also potentially find both halves of the Kiki-Jiki Pestamite combo, or any small creature that's useful in the moment. The Recruiter is popular in EDH too, appearing in just under 5% of all decks on EDHREC. Number 73. Prismatic Ending. X and 1 white. Exile target non-land permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. Prismatic Ending is one of the most efficient white removal spells in Modern, and you could even make the case that it pushed Path to Exile out of its long-held throne. Its flexibility, versatility, and scalability are great, doing work at all stages of the game. It's obviously especially brutal when it comes to getting rid of permanents with mana value 0, such as tokens and moxes. Number 72. Gemstone Mine. This rainbow land was an uncommon when it first appeared in Weatherlight. It enters with 3 mining counters on it, and has tap, remove a mining counter from this land, add 1 mana of any color. If there are no mining counters on this land, sacrifice it. Gemstone Mine is tailored to decks that are greedy on mana and have a fast game plan, since it provides immediate unconditional 5-color mana fixing. While it can only be used 3 times, most decks aim to pull off a combo before that matters, or else get value out of Gemstone Mine by recurring it from the graveyard or simply bouncing it back to hand, like with Simic Growth Chamber. Nowadays, you see it in some Legacy, Storm, and Necrodominance decks, while in Modern it's used in Cosmogoyf decks and some builds of Allosaurus combo. Number 71. Cephalid Colosseum. Threshold is a somewhat obscure ability word from Judgment, but it's pretty simple in practice. Once you have 7 cards in your graveyard or more, your Threshold cards turn on and gain additional effects. Cephalid Colosseum takes full advantage of this. It's a land that can tap for 1 blue at the cost of taking 1 damage, but once Threshold is active, it gains pay 1 blue, Tap, sacrifice this land, target player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards. In other words, it turns into an incredibly efficient card selection / looting engine, letting you dig deeper into your deck for answers or combo pieces at a very low cost. In dredge decks especially, where enabling threshold is easy, that effect becomes dredge 3 times. The discard can even be an upside in those kinds of graveyard-focused strategies. On top of that, Cephalid Colosseum can be used offensively to mill opponents in certain matchups. All told, it's one of the most powerful utility lands Blue has access to when built around properly. Number 70. Mystical Dispute. This riff on mana leak is a staple across several formats. Mystical Dispute is 3 mana and says, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. However, Mystical Dispute costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell, so it's essentially an anti-blue counterspell. It dominates counterspell exchanges, effectively functioning as a 1 mana gainsay in blue mirrors. Even when you're not playing against blue, the card's floor is fairly high. A 3 mana leak is hardly exciting, but it is serviceable. Consequently, Mystical Dispute puts in work in a ton of archetypes, from Legacy Artifacts Blue to Vintage Esper Luris. In Modern, it shows up in every second sideboard, whether you're playing Mill, Affinity, Living End, Jeskai Blink, or Allosaurus combo. Number 69. Cabal Coffers. This is one of the most powerful big mana lands in the game. Cabal Coffers has pay 2, tap, add 1 black for each swamp you control. This is gradual but exponential ramp. It doesn't do much early. You generally need at least 4 swamps in play before it starts generating a net gain, but once it gets going, the returns scale quickly with every additional land. It's especially strong alongside Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, especially in multicolor decks. In Commander, people frequently pair it with untap effects like Deserted Temple or Magus of the Candelabra to produce massive bursts of mana, which you can then dump into a big threat like Archon of Cruelty or an X spell like Torment of Hailfire. Number 68. Goblin Lackey. This is one of the scariest aggro 1-drops ever. Goblin Lackey is a 1/1 goblin for 1 red, with whenever this creature deals damage to a player, you may put a goblin permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. This enables massive mana cheating. Drop it on turn 1, connect on turn 2, and suddenly you're dropping something massive like Siege Gang Commander or Muxus Goblin Grandee straight into play. From there, things obviously escalate quickly. It's not unusual to end up with a full board of goblins by turn 3, with Muxus itself swinging as a huge threat before your opponent has any real chance to properly stabilize. In other words, Lackey demands an immediate answer, or threatens to seize momentum all by itself. Number 67. Dismember. 1 generic and 2 Phyrexian black. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. Usually this is just a 1 mana removal spell. Its real strength has shown up in colorless or off-color strategies like Infect, Tron, and Shops, where efficient interaction is otherwise hard to come by. Dismember excels at handling cheap, disruptive creatures, including indestructible ones. It's an example of Phyrexian mana done right, powerful and flexible, but still carrying a real cost that keeps it from being completely broken. Number 66. Land Tax. This EDH and pre-modern staple was originally printed at Uncommon in Legends. It's an enchantment for 1 white that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. That effect is one of White's most elegant answers to the problem of falling behind on mana. For just a single mana, Land Tax quietly punishes opponents, especially green ramp decks, for pulling ahead on lands by letting you repeatedly search up basics and keep your hand stocked. This thins your deck, fixes your colors, and generates a steady stream of value. Land Tax's most famous synergy is with Scroll Rack. You use Land Tax to fill your hand with basic lands, then use Scroll Rack to swap those lands for the top cards of your library, an interaction that shows up fairly often in pre-modern. Number 65. Claws of Gix. Claws of Gix is a deceptively flexible little artifact. It costs 0 mana and has pay 1 generic, sacrifice a permanent, you gain 1 life. The life gain itself is almost beside the point, however. The real appeal is that it's a near-free, instant speed sacrifice outlet that can hit any permanent, and it's colorless too and costs no mana. In recent months, the card has become popular in modern Pinnacle Affinity, where it's an easy way to trigger weapons manufacturing and a great tool for enabling metalcraft. Number 64. Goblin Bombardment. Goblin Bombardment is one of the cleanest and most efficient sacrifice outlets ever printed. For just 2 mana, it gives you a free, repeatable way to sacrifice creatures at instant speed. That alone makes it a cornerstone for combo decks built around sacrifice loops. The beauty of Bombardment is that it doesn't care what kind of creature you're sacrificing. Despite its name, it doesn't only work with goblins. Every creature is suitable fodder for it. That flexibility means it slots into a wide range of strategies, from aristocrat-style decks to full-on infinite combos where creatures can be looped for endless damage. Even outside of combos, it pulls its weight. Being able to turn creatures into direct damage gives you reach in stalled board states, lets you play around removal, makes combat math tricky for your opponent, and is a nice way to pick off small threats. These days, Bombardment shines brightest in Modern's Boros energy decks, where it can sack cats to flip a Johnny, or simply convert your board into the final points of lethal damage. Number 63. Animate Dead. Animate Dead is one of those classic, slightly awkwardly worded but flavorful old cards. Beneath the dense old-school templating is a very simple idea. Bring a creature back from the graveyard, but bind its existence to the enchantment itself. If one goes, the other follows. At face value, it's an incredibly efficient reanimation spell, letting you cheat massive threats into play for just 2 mana. But once you start digging into the way its triggers work, things get much more interesting. Indeed, the card creates a web of interactions that clever players can exploit. The most infamous example is with World Gorger Dragon, where Animate Dead enables a loop that repeatedly exiles and returns all your other permanents. With the right payoff, that loop can immediately win the game. Number 62. Tendrils of Agony. Legacy Storm's defining finisher. 4 mana black sorcery, target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Storm. Even a relatively small setup can swing the game dramatically, and once you get into double-digit storm counts, the game is simply over. A big part of what makes Tendrils so good is how cleanly it fits into the Storm engine. Effects like Dark Ritual and Cabal Ritual generate huge bursts of mana, while tutors ensure you can reliably find Tendrils when it's time to go off. The deck spends the early turns sculpting its hand, then explodes in a single big turn, casting spell after spell before finishing with a lethal Tendrils. Number 61. Fel the Profane. A black MDFC land from MH3. Fel the Profane is a 4 mana instant that says, destroy target creature or planeswalker. That may seem a little pricey at 4 mana, but the flexibility it offers more than justifies the cost. A land slot that can later turn into an unconditional instant speed removal spell is incredibly powerful, and that kind of built-in versatility is something almost any black deck is happy to take advantage of. In Modern, Necrodominance in particular makes great use of Fel the Profane, as they can pitch it to things like Soul Spike and Force of Despair. In Legacy, it's a staple of Oops All Spells decks. Number 60. Spell Snare. Spell Snare is the definition of a high variance counterspell. In the right metagame, it's incredible. cleanly answering some of the most important 2-mana plays in the format for just a single blue mana. In the wrong meta, however, it can sit in your hand doing absolutely nothing. When it's good though, it's really good. It almost always trades up on mana, letting you stop a key spell while staying ahead on tempo, and it's incredibly easy to hold up alongside your other plays or interaction. Formats like Modern have often revolved around powerful 2-drops, and in those windows, Spell Snare becomes a premium piece of interaction. It once took out Dark Confidant and Tarmogoyf, now it hits Ajani Nakatal Pariah and Ruby Medallion. Number 59. Boggart Trawler. Bojuka Bog has been ruining graveyard strategies for years, and now there's a second version of that effect, this time attached to a creature you can potentially reuse. That's a big upgrade, especially in decks that can loop or recur it for repeated value. Boggart Trawler is a modal double-faced land, and its front face is a 3/1 black goblin for 3 mana that says, when it enters, exile target player's graveyard. Its backside, Boggart Bog, is a land that can enter the battlefield untapped if you pay 3 life. At this point, black decks don't even need to devote dedicated non-land slots to graveyard hate. Between Bojuka Bog and this newer option, you can cover that axis almost incidentally, just by including a couple of flexible lands and calling it a day. Number 58. Shardless Agent. During the time when Violent Outburst was banned, this was the best Cascade enabler in Modern. It's 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 generic for a 2/2 artifact creature with Cascade. In decks designed around Crashing Footfalls or Living End, Shardless Agent is basically a 1-card combo. In Modern, it also shows up in Simic Birthing Ritual decks, where being pitchable to both Subtlety and Force of Vigor is a big plus. Number 57. Narcomoeba. This quirky jellyfish from Future Sight is awful as a creature to hardcast, but fantastic as an engine piece for graveyard decks. It's 1 generic and 1 blue for a 1/1 flyer that says, when this card is put into your graveyard from your library, you may put it onto the battlefield. This makes Narcomoeba a brilliant free resource that rewards you for milling yourself. It's strong in any dredge deck, and ideal as Dread Return fodder. To cast Dread Return for its flashback cost, you need to sacrifice 3 creatures. Narcomoebas provide those bodies for free as you mill your deck, allowing you to reanimate a game ender like Thassa's Oracle or Flamekin Zealot without spending a single mana. Narcomoeba can also trigger Prized Amalgam, or simply buy you time as a chump blocker. As a result, this little creature has been a mainstay of competitive graveyard decks for close on 20 years. Number 56. Deafening Silence. Enchantment for 1 white. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. That severely hampers archetypes like Storm, Living End, and Jeskai Ascendancy. Even Neoform decks hoping to cast Summoner's Pact and Neoform in the same turn find it pretty annoying. White-based decks often bring Deafening Silence in from the sideboard because it's an inexpensive hate card that leaves their own creature-focused strategy untouched. Number 55. Celestial Purge. Instant for 1 generic and 1 white. Exile target black or red permanent. A popular sideboard pick, Celestial Purge is a streamlined way of dealing with problematic black and red permanents like Ragavan, Blood Moon, etc. Because it exiles rather than destroys, it also bypasses graveyard recursion and other death trigger interactions. Number 54. Beast Within. This color pie breaking instant from New Phyrexia costs 2 generic and 1 green and says, destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Paying 3 mana for the ability to answer nearly any permanent is what makes Beast Within one of green's premier interaction spells. The drawback of gifting an opponent a vanilla 3/3 is usually negligible, especially when compared to the far more dangerous permanents being removed. As a result, the card sees play in an impressive 33% of all commander decks on EDH Rec. Number 53. Meltdown. This is one of the most vicious sideboard answers to artifact decks. Sorcery for 1 red and X. Destroy each artifact with mana value X or less. With Mox Opal returning to prominence, Meltdown has become one of the most played cards in Modern, capable of clearing out an opponent's entire board of cheap artifacts in a single cheap shot. Even casting it for X equals 0 can be backbreaking, since it destroys Moxes, Memnites, Construct tokens, and Drone tokens. In decks like Blue-Red Prowess, Meltdown is also great at dealing with the likes of Chalice of the Void, Amulet of Vigor, and Engineered Explosives. Number 52. Mishra's Bauble. Mishra's Bauble does a surprising amount for a card that costs 0. First and foremost, it replaces itself for free, which is functionally similar to shrinking your deck size, making it more likely you'll draw into your best cards over the course of a game. That alone would make it playable in some decks. Beyond that, the Bauble quietly fuels a lot of synergies. It puts a card into your graveyard for Delirium or Delve threats. It's a free spell to trigger Prowess or Flurry. The information it provides also matters. Seeing the top card of a deck lets you make informed decisions, especially when paired with fetch lands that can shuffle away unwanted draws. Finally, it being a free artifact opens up even more interactions. Whether it's enabling artifact counts, triggering effects, or just existing as a disposable resource, Mishra's Bauble consistently overperforms for something that asks so little. Number 51. The Talismans. Originating in Mirrodin block, the Talismans are 2 mana artifacts that can tap for 1 colorless mana or 1 mana of a particular 2 color combination, but at the cost of dealing 1 damage to you. They're smooth, fast, and consistent. Importantly, the Talismans tap immediately for mana without any setup, which makes them far better than, say, Signets for curving out and double spelling. That difference becomes especially notable in decks with strict color requirements. In Modern, Eldrazi and Tron decks frequently run the Gruul Talisman or the Golgari one, while the Boros Talisman has been showing up in red-white Belcher decks. Number 50. Worldly Tutor. The Green Mirage Tutor. Worldly Tutor is an instant for 1 green with search your library for a creature card, reveal it, then shuffle and put the card on top. All of the Mirage Tutors are undeniably powerful, but Worldly Tutor often ends up feeling like the most replaceable of the bunch. Not because it's weak, but because green is already overflowing with ways to find creatures. Between cards like Green Sun Zenith, Finale of Devastation, and a host of creature-based tutors, the effect just isn't as scarce. Worldly Tutor is still efficient, but putting the card on top of your library rather than into your hand is a real cost, especially compared to some more modern options. It still has its place, particularly in combo decks that need redundancy or instant speed setup, even if it doesn't feel as mandatory as its Mirage counterparts. This card certainly still shines in EDH, and it commands a price tag of over $20. Number 49. Ether Vial. 1 mana for an artifact with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on this artifact, and tap, you may put a creature card with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on this artifact from your hand onto the battlefield. Early on, it didn't look like much. Slow, conditional, and a bit awkward. But once players realized what it actually enabled, Ether Vial quickly became one of the defining cards of its era and beyond. What makes Ether Vial so powerful is how it rewrites the rules of tempo. It lets you deploy creatures without spending mana, effectively turning your entire curve into free plays over time. That alone is strong, but the real breaking point is that it does this at instant speed and completely sidesteps counterspells. Control decks can hold up all the interaction they want, Vial just doesn't care. While many artifact cards from Mirrodin Block were designed to work within that ecosystem, Aether Vial proved far more universal. It found homes across multiple archetypes and formats: goblins, merfolk, humans, Death and Taxes style decks, tons of tribal synergies, and even some combo shells, because cheating on mana and timing and being counterproof is always powerful. Aether Vial fixes color requirements and turns every creature into a potential surprise. Number 48. Berserk. Berserk is one of the most explosive pump spells of all time, and it's easy to see why Legacy Infect leans on it so heavily. For 1 green, it says, target creature gains trample and gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is its power. At the beginning of the next end step, destroy that creature if it attacked this turn. Doubling a creature's power for just a single green is absurdly efficient, and the trample means it cuts through chump blockers with ease. The downside of losing the creature at end of turn is almost irrelevant in most scenarios. If Berserk resolves and the creature connects, the game is usually over anyway. It thrives in hyper-aggressive strategies that care more about ending the game immediately than preserving their resources. While it's most commonly associated with Infect, Berserk's raw efficiency means it can shine in any deck looking to push through sudden, overwhelming damage. Number 47. Into the Floodmaw. This overperformer from Bloomburrow is a 1-mana blue instant, gift a tapped fish, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Crucially, with this, you get to bounce any non-land permanent. That kind of flexibility at that cheap cost is incredibly rare, immediately providing the card with a home in plenty of competitive decks. The drawback is giving your opponent a tapped 1/1 fish token, but that's almost irrelevant most of the time. When the threats you're dealing with are game-warping bombs or control pieces sabotaging your combos, trading them for a harmless 1/1 is a deal you take every time. This makes Into the Floodmaw a kind of break glass in case of emergency option. In Modern, it's particularly useful in glass cannon strategies like Blue Belcher and Allosaurus combo, letting you deal with problem cards like Clarion Conqueror and Vexing Bauble with ease. That said, you can also use it offensively. For example, if your opponent has cast a ton of pump spells with their Slickshot Show-Off and it's threatening lethal, bouncing it back to their hand with Into the Floodmaw is pretty backbreaking. Number 46. Eldrazi Temple. Although initially printed as a rare, this one got downshifted to uncommon for Modern Masters 2015 and Commander Masters. Eldrazi Temple is a build around Soul Land that only asks that you play Eldrazi, a requirement that's barely a drawback given how powerful those creatures already are. In return, you get a massive burst of mana that lets you deploy threats ahead of schedule. When your lands are effectively ramp spells with no real opportunity cost, things can spiral quickly. Alongside Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Temple was a central piece of Modern's infamous Eldrazi Winter, and even now it continues to help keep the archetype competitive in Modern and Legacy. In this sense, Eldrazi Temple hits a power sweet spot. Cards like Untai Dake the Cloudkeeper sit on the fringes, asking too much for too little. The Temple, on the other hand, offers a high payoff and has enough tribal support to make it shine. Number 45. Narset, Parter of Veils. Narset, Parter of Veils is one of those planeswalkers that does two powerful things at once, and both matter immediately. On the one hand, her minus ability effectively acts like a dig through time spread over multiple turns, digging you toward the exact non-creature, non-land cards you need. Even if she only activates once or twice, she's already generated a ton of solid value. But the real reason Narset is so feared is her static ability. Shutting opponents down to one card per turn can completely cripple entire strategies built around card draw. Cantrips, draw spells, engines, they all suddenly stop working. For this reason, Narset is restricted in Vintage, as she hoses staples like Ancestral Recall and Brainstorm a little too well. And then there's the infamous synergy with wheel effects. Pair Narset with something that forces everyone to discard and redraw, and your opponents are left with basically nothing while you reload your whole hand. It's a brutally efficient lock that can end games basically in one hit. So, in sum, at worst, Narset is a value engine. At best, she's a one-sided, game-warping disruption piece. Number 44. Baleful Strix. For just 2 mana, you get a cheap, evasive artifact creature body that replaces itself immediately. Already a strong baseline, but the addition of Death Touch transforms it into something far more versatile, letting it function as both an offensive chip threat and a defensive roadblock that even the biggest creatures have to respect. Being an artifact opens it up to a wide range of synergies, from artifact-centric decks to blink strategies that can use it to repeatedly draw cards. Baleful Strix slots effortlessly into control, mid-range, and combo shells alike, always doing something useful without demanding too much support. It's the kind of glue card that quietly holds entire strategies together. Number 43. Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer was part of Core Set 2020's Color Hate cycle, a spiritual successor to Autumn's Veil, and it ended up being far more powerful than anyone expected, quickly receiving bans in Standard and Pioneer. At first glance, it might look narrow. For 1 green, you and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn, and you get to draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. However, against control or mid-range decks, Veil of Summer is a 1 mana no to interaction, hitting counterspells, discard, and removal all at once. What truly pushes it over the edge is the cantrip. Most answers require you to trade resources, but Veil replaces itself, meaning you're not even down a card for shutting down your opponent's entire play. That efficiency is what made it so oppressive in certain environments. It stopped key plays while keeping your hand stocked, which is exactly the kind of effect that breaks the usual balance of interaction. In this regard, Veil of Summer does a pretty good cryptic command impression, but for just 1 mana. It may have started life as a sideboard tool, but it proved strong enough to be main deckable during its time in Standard. In formats like Modern, it remains a powerful option for shutting down some of the most frustrating forms of interaction in the game. Veil of Summer makes Neoform decks much scarier, for example. Not for nothing, the card has earned the nickname Green Elemental Blast. Number 42. Elvish Spirit Guide. The precursor to Simian Spirit Guide, Elvish Spirit Guide is 3 mana for a 2/2 with exile this creature from your hand, add 1 green. In essence, it's a green-only Lotus Petal that can't be countered by traditional counter magic. In the right shell, that free mana becomes incredibly powerful. Being able to accelerate into something like Chalice of the Void or a Planeswalker like Minsk and Boo Timeless Heroes a turn early can completely tilt the game before your opponent has a chance to respond. That kind of tempo boost is often worth far more than the card you're giving up. That's why Elvish Spirit Guide shows up in fast combo and prison strategies, decks that care far more about quick starts than long-term card advantage. If you can convert that 1 burst of mana into a game-winning position, the drawback simply doesn't matter. For this reason, Elvish Spirit Guide powers Oops All Spells decks in Legacy, and Full English Breakfast combo in Pre-Modern. Number 41. Stock Up. Pro player Frank Carsten called this perhaps the best divination variant ever, and he may be right. Stock Up is a 3 mana sorcery with look at the top 5 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. The amount of card selection it offers pushes it well beyond the usual divination style effects. Yes, being a sorcery is a drawback. You lose the flexibility of holding up into action and then drawing at instant speed, one of the things that made predecessors like Thirst for Knowledge so good, but what you gain in consistency more than makes up for it. Stock Up helps smooth draws, find key pieces, and avoid flooding or bricking in a way that traditional draw spells simply can't match. This card just has such broad applicability, capable of grabbing cards of any type. Not to mention the wording is important too. Because it puts cards into your hand without technically drawing them, it sidesteps some of the most common forms of punishment in modern Magic. Cards like Orcish Bowmasters or other draw hate effects don't get triggered. Stock Up gets around Narset Parter of Veils for the same reason. On top of that, unlike cards that reveal what you took, Stock Up keeps your choices secret from your opponent, making it harder for them to play around what you take. Number 40. Inquisition of Kozilek. Sorcery, 1 black. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it with mana value 3 or less. That player discards that card. Despite the mana value restriction, Inquisition still ranks among the most efficient discard spells. It shines brightest in faster formats where most decks are built around cheap, high-impact spells. While it misses the very top end of the curve, that's rarely an issue when the cards that matter most cost 3 or less anyway. In those environments, it's one of the cleanest and most reliable ways to get ahead early and stay ahead. The lack of life loss means it's usually better against aggro strategies than its cousin Thoughtseize. Number 39. Dragon's Rage Channeler. DRC is 1 red for a 1/1 with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Surveil 1. And as long as you have Delirium, this creature gets +2/+2, has flying, and attacks each combat if able. It's an engine and a threat rolled into 1, which is a rare combination for a 1-drop. DRC fuels your graveyard through Surveil, smooths your draws, builds you toward Delirium, and then turns itself into a legitimate finisher once Delirium is active. This makes it formidable in decks like Blue-Red Prowess and Arclight Phoenix, and it quickly earned a spot among iconic cards like Monastery Swiftspear as one of the best red 1-drops of all time. Number 38. Amped Raptor. This creature was banned from Modern in short order because of how much it turbocharged Boros energy decks. It's 1 generic and 1 red for a 2/1 with First Strike. When it enters, you get 2 energy. Then, if you cast it from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by paying an amount of energy equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. So the Raptor is both enabler and payoff for energy strategies. By generating energy and immediately converting it into mana or additional value, it effectively refunds or even exceeds its own cost the moment it hits the battlefield. The dream play was to go turn 1, Guide of Souls, turn 2, play Raptor, get 3 total energy, flip into Flage, cast Flage for no mana. In the early turns, Amped Raptor can function like a burst of 1 to 4 extra mana, letting you jump ahead on board or chain into further plays far earlier than intended. Not to mention the 2/1 Raptor's own first striking body isn't too shabby either. In late 2024, Boros Energy was dominating Modern, and Wizards decided that the Raptor needed to be banned to neuter the deck's potential for explosive starts. Number 37. Krark Clan Ironworks. For 4 mana, this artifact from 5th Dawn offers a simple but incredibly potent mana generation ability. Sacrifice an artifact, add 2 colorless. In the late 2010s, the card was the centerpiece of a powerful Modern deck that won with artifact loops and ridiculous amounts of generation, sacrificing eggs like Chromatic Star to draw cards while doing so. In 2018, KCI decks posted more Grand Prix top 8 finishes than any other Modern archetype, despite only making up a fairly small slice of the overall meta due to their complexity to actually play. The deck's raw win rate and high GP top 8 conversion rate, along with the arcane rules interactions it sometimes produced, led to the banning of Krark Clan Ironworks from Modern in January 2019. Number 36. Mother of Runes. This card was, for many years, one of the most played creatures in Legacy. though it has declined significantly in recent years. It's 1 white for a 1/1 with tap, target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. It's one of those deceptively simple abilities that completely takes over games if left unchecked. Mother of Runes turns every combat step, removal spell, and interaction into a nightmare for your opponent. She lets you blank removal, force damage through blockers, or even knock off auras by changing protection colors mid-combat. Mom is also a great chump blocker. Because she can give herself protection, she can jump in front of a massive non-trampling creature and take 0 damage. This range of options makes her relevant in almost every stage of the game. It's no surprise she became a staple in Legacy Death and Taxes, where protecting key creatures is central to the game plan. And her influence goes beyond just one deck. Cards like Giver of Runes and Skrelv Defector Might are clear descendants of her design, trying to replicate that same oppressive ability. Since her debut in Urza's Legacy, Mother of Runes has remained a defining utility creature. Number 35. Summer Bloom. Sorcery for 1 generic and 1 green, lets you play up to 3 additional lands this turn. That sounds pretty flashy, but the card actually made no competitive impact at all when it first came out, since there wasn't a strategy around to make full use of it. Although printed in 1997, Summer Bloom only posted its first competitive result in 2011. In the early 2010s, modern Amulet Titan decks began running it due to its insane synergy with Amulet of Vigor and the Ravnica bounce lands. You play a bounce land, untap it with Amulet, tap it for 2 mana, then use its own ability to return it to your hand. You repeat this for all 3 extra land drops from the bloom, generating massive amounts of mana. With this line, you could potentially drop game-ending bombs like Primeval Titan as soon as the 2nd turn. These decks became so strong that Summer Bloom ate a ban in January 2016. People still run it in Commander, of course, as well as in some Turbo Lands decks in pre-modern. Number 34. Price of Progress. Modern players salivate at the thought of this getting a reprint in a modern legal set. Price of Progress is an instant that costs 1 generic and 1 red. It deals damage to each player equal to twice the number of non-basic lands that player controls. It's one of the most hardcore punishers of a greedy mana base. For just 2 mana, it can deal an enormous chunk of damage. In formats and tables where players lean on fetch lands, jewel lands, shock lands, and utility lands, it can potentially dish out huge amounts of mana on the cheap. In 3 or 4 color decks, it's not uncommon for this to deal 6, 8, or even more damage in one shot, all while you've built your own mana base to minimize the downside. You could potentially just run basic mountains and be totally immune to it. In this regard, Price of Progress attacks on an interesting axis. The more optimized and powerful your opponent's mana base is, the harder they get hit. The mere existence of the card influences mana base construction. Number 33. Sink into Stupor. While the whole MH3 MDFC cycle is strong, Sink into Stupor clearly stands above the rest. Functionally, it plays like a juiced up Unsubstantiate. For a bit more mana, you get a flexible answer that can disrupt combo turns or temporarily remove a problematic permanent. In competitive formats, it checks a lot of important boxes. It pitches to Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Subtlety, while still being perfectly reasonable to cast at 3 mana, and it comes with little opportunity cost since it can also produce mana. In Commander, its value shifts slightly but remains just as compelling. Sink into Stupor buys you time, and importantly, it works on spells that can't be countered. Put it all together, and this is the kind of card that fits just about anywhere. No matter what kind of blue deck you're building, Sink into Stupor is an easy inclusion. 1 in 5 modern decks currently run it. Number 32. Flow State. The original Strixhaven gave us Expressive Iteration, and now we've got Flow State, which is either a side grade or an upgrade depending on your point of view. It's 1 generic and 1 blue for a sorcery reading, Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. If there is an instant card and a sorcery card in your graveyard, instead put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. The first notable difference from Expressive is that this card is mono blue, meaning it can fit into more diverse builds color-wise. Another significant upside is how much better this plays in counterspell heavy decks. Exiling a counterspell with Expressive Iteration and being unable to cast it feels bad. Flow State avoids that awkwardness entirely. It also keeps your opponent in the dark, which isn't a massive edge, but it does matter at the margins. In theory, Flow State can even draw you 2 cards as early as turn 2, though that's not something you can rely on. Getting both an instant and a sorcery into your graveyard that quickly just isn't consistent outside of very specific sequences. Realistically, Flow State tends to come online around the same stage of the game as Expressive Iteration, but only if your curve lines up neatly with a mix of instants and sorceries. That's a meaningful drawback. Still, what's interesting is that you don't have to choose between them. You can run both Flow State and Expressive Iteration potentially. It didn't take long for this card to make a competitive impact. Over the last 2 weeks, a full 32% of Legacy decks on MTG Top 8 played Flow State. Its price has risen in tandem, now hovering around $7. Time will tell whether the card deserves an even higher spot on this list. Number 31. Fatal Push. Back when this card was released in 2017, it dramatically raised the bar for removal efficiency in Modern. The range of threats it could handle at that cost was almost unprecedented, and turning on Revolt is rarely a challenge. Anything of yours leaving the battlefield counts, whether it's cracking a fetch land, sacrificing a treasure, or even picking up a land with a bounce effect. Even without Revolt enabled, Push still kills a lot of problematic creatures, like Urza's Saga constructs, Mana Dorks, Manlands, Ragavan, Death's Shadow, Badgermole Cub, etc. Consequently, in 60-card formats, Fatal Push was a seismic addition. It reshaped removal suites overnight and remains a defining staple across formats from Pioneer all the way up to Vintage. Number 30. Swords to Plowshares. The purest expression of white removal. Even decades after Alpha, nothing in that color has truly eclipsed it. For a single mana, Swords to Plowshares answers almost anything without triggering death effects, all while sidestepping Indestructible and shutting down recursion. Unlike cards such as Fatal Push or Prismatic Ending, which have mana value limits, Swords to Plowshares takes out a 1-mana Ragavan or a 7-mana Atraxa with equal ease. On top of that remarkable removal efficiency, the card even has interesting corner cases, like targeting your own creature to gain life in a pinch. It's still one of the most played cards in Legacy, appearing in 22% of decks on MTG Top 8. Number 29. Personal Tutor. Arriving a year after the busted Mirage Tutor cycle, Portal's Personal Tutor offered a nerfed but still strong riff on the same idea. It's 1 blue to search your library for a sorcery card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. Crucially, unlike its predecessor Mystical Tutor, Personal Tutor can only find sorceries, not sorceries and instants. And it itself is a sorcery, making it more awkward to cast. Nevertheless, the card is still a cheap way to find whatever sorcery you need, usually big haymakers like Doomsday. In EDH, people frequently use it to grab things like Windfall, Elemental Eruption, Grapeshot, and Temporal Mastery. Number 28. Enlightened Tutor. Enlightened Tutor is the premier utility finder for white. Originally from Mirage, it's an absolute staple in Legacy, Vintage, and Commander because it searches for both artifacts and enchantments. It's especially popular in the latter format, showing up in 4 million decks on EDH Rec, or 15% of the entire meta. It's a low mana investment to find a silver bullet or combo piece, offering a ton of flexibility. Enlightened Tutor is an instant too, so it's great to cast on your opponent's end step. Number 27. Expressive Iteration. Expressive Iteration is one of the last decade's strongest card advantage spells. Costing 1 red and 1 blue, it says look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, put one of them on the bottom of your library, and exile one of them. You may play the exiled card this turn. For the low cost of just 2 mana, you're effectively drawing 2 cards, but with selection. You get to dig 3 deep, keep the best card, and potentially immediately play another. Often you're exiling and playing a land, making this a fantastic turn 3 play. Expressive Iteration helps you sculpt your early turns and find answers to the problems you're facing. In games 2 or 3, it's very useful for getting hold of your high impact sideboard cards as well. That level of efficiency is absurd in any format built around tight resource exchanges, explaining why it's banned in Pioneer and Legacy. In the latter format, Wizards felt Expressive Iteration helped Izzet Delver decks respond too well to changes in the meta. Number 26. Up the Beanstalk. 2 mana green enchantment. When it enters, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. Up the Beanstalk is one of those cards that looks fair until you actually start building around it. The key is that mana value 5 doesn't actually have to mean spells that cost you 5 mana. In formats full of cost reduction and alternate casting methods, you can trigger Beanstalk far more easily than intended. Affinity decks, delve spells, domain strategies all find ways to cast high mana value cards for very little mana, turning Beanstalk into a consistent draw engine. Cards like Force of Will and the Evoke Elementals can trigger it too, as does casting the Duskmourn Overlords for their impending costs. That's what pushes it from solid value into something much more busted. In other words, the Beanstalk asks almost nothing up front, and then quietly snowballs advantage turn after turn. It's efficient, scalable, and easy to abuse. Indeed, it's hard to really interact with or remove Beanstalk in a way that yields any real advantage, because it refunds itself the moment it resolves, and players sometimes immediately follow it up with an instant speed 5 CMC spell to trigger it and get even more value. Perhaps most revealing is the fact that many Cascade players began running Up the Beanstalk as their payoff rather than the traditionally powerful zero-cost spells like Crashing Footfalls or Living End. Standard and modern bans swiftly followed. Number 25. Cabal Therapy. Cabal Therapy is one of the most skill-testing discard spells ever printed, and in the right hands, it's absolutely devastating. It's a 1 mana black sorcery reading, choose a non-land card name, target player reveals their hand and discards all cards with that name. It also has flashback. Instead of mana, the flashback cost is you simply sacrifice a creature. So the traditional line is you hard cast Therapy, see your opponent's hand, then sack something to immediately flash it back and nuke their hand based on the information you've received. On its own, blind naming a card is risky, but when you pair it with information from something like Gitaxian Probe or other discard effects, Cabal Therapy becomes a surgical tool that can strip multiple copies of a key card at once and then potentially do it again. That's where its ceiling really starts to show. Unlike most discard spells, Cabal Therapy can hit all copies of a card, which is backbreaking against combo decks or strategies built around specific pieces. You can also use it proactively to protect your own combo lines. And then there's the flashback. Turning an expendable creature into another discard spell gives you a 2-for-1 that also advances your game plan in decks built to exploit it. In formats like Legacy, where information and efficiency are crucial, Cabal Therapy thrives. It rewards knowledge of the metagame, careful sequencing, and tight play. When piloted properly, it can dismantle an opponent's entire game plan in one go. On top of that, the sacrifice can even be beneficial, allowing you to trigger your creature's death abilities, etc. Not for nothing, Cabal Therapy is one of the most played cards in Legacy, appearing in 9% of all decks on MTG Top 8. Number 24. Reanimate. Reanimate is one of the strongest takes on a fundamentally broken effect, so much so that the term reanimate became a permanent part of the Magic lexicon. For a single black mana, this sorcery lets you return any creature in a graveyard to the battlefield. Then you lose life equal to its mana value. While the life loss is real, ultimately it's just another resource to spend, and one you're more than happy to pay when the payoff is this extreme. Unlike other reanimation spells, Reanimate doesn't place any restrictions on what kinds of creatures it can bring back. It doesn't even care whose graveyard it is, so you can even steal your opponent's dead creatures if necessary. In traditional Legacy Reanimator, Reanimate enables cheating something like Grizzlebrand into play on turn 1. But even outside of dedicated combo shells, the card remains incredible. Decks like Blue-Black Death's Shadow showed just how strong its fair mode can be. Reanimating an opponent's threat for 1 mana while also lowering your own life total to buff Shadow is a strong play. Whether you're executing a fast combo or just stealing the best creature in a graveyard, Reanimate tilts the game state in your favor for just 1 mana. Few cards offer that kind of power with so little restriction, which is why it's long been considered the gold standard for reanimation effects. Number 23. Sylvan Library. This enchantment was printed at Uncommon in Legends. It's 1 generic and 1 green and reads, at the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put the card on top of your library. This is incredible card selection, with the option of converting life into raw card advantage. Where Sylvan Library really gets out of hand is when paired with top deck manipulation. Cards like Sensei's Divining Top, Fetch Lands, Scry, or Surveil effects let you control what you're seeing and shuffle away what you don't want. This makes Sylvan Library incredibly difficult to outvalue once it sticks, explaining why close to 9% of all commander decks on EDH Rec run it. Number 22. Consign to Memory. For a single blue mana, you can either counter a colorless spell or a triggered ability, both of which are incredibly relevant in modern Magic. Against Eldrazi, for example, Consign does something most cards can't. It can counter both the spell being cast and its cast trigger. The Replicate ability pushes it even further. If you have the mana, you can copy the spell multiple times and wipe out an entire stack of triggers. That's devastating against decks that rely on chaining abilities together, whether it's Nadu-style combo turns or powerful ETB effects like Grief. Being able to answer multiple threats or interactions at once gives Consign an unusual amount of scaling for such a cheap spell. It also provides resilience against counter magic. You can replicate and target the same spell with the copies, demanding that your opponent have more than one answer in order to ensure their spell resolves. This makes Consign particularly strong against decks such as Blue Belcher. However, that's only scratching the surface of what Consign can do. There are scores of interesting triggered abilities it can hit, including your own. Jeskai Blink decks use the card in cool ways, for instance stifling their own Solitude's Evoke Sacrifice triggers, or the discard trigger on Casey Jones, or even Felia's End Step trigger returning things to the battlefield. In addition, Neoform decks famously use Consign to counter the Lose the Game triggers on their Pacts of Negation and Summoner's Pact. Consequently, Consign to Memory rapidly became one of the most popular cards in Modern, now appearing in 16% of all modern decks on MTG Top 8. Likewise, it shows up in 8.5% of all Legacy decks. Due to all this demand, the card's price on Magic Online hit a whopping $43 at one point, which is insane for an uncommon. Number 21. Caracas. This powerhouse land was also an uncommon in Legends. Caracas has tap, add 1 white, and tap, return target legendary creature to its owner's hand. Being able to repeatedly bounce legendary creatures at instant speed is incredibly strong. In Legacy Death and Taxes, it protects key threats like Thalia from removal, while also letting you reuse ETB effects. At the same time, it acts as a hard check against strategies trying to cheat massive legends like Grizzlebrand or Emrakul into play. That's what makes Caracas so polarizing. In some games, it's just a land with minor utility. In others, it completely invalidates your opponent's game plan while advancing your own. And the fact that this effect comes stapled onto a land, something that's already difficult to interact with, pushes it even further. Banned in Commander, heavily played in Legacy and Vintage. Number 20. Wasteland. This mean land was an uncommon back in Tempest. It has tap, add 1 colorless, and tap, sacrifice this land, destroy target non-basic land. It's a great safety valve and tempo weapon. Originally intended as a supposedly fixed version of Strip Mine, it remains a 4-copy staple in Legacy and Vintage because it punishes greedy mana bases and prevents unfair lands from taking over the game. It's a stone rain that only costs a land play, easily color screwing your opponent or taking out a high power land like Dark Depths or Urza's Saga. Pair it with Renin 6 or Crucible of Worlds and you can do so repeatedly. Currently, Wasteland is the most played card in Legacy, appearing in 53% of all decks on MTG Top 8. Number 19. Maze of Ith. Maze of Ith is one of the most iconic utility lands, more like a repeatable 0 mana fog than a typical mana resource, and it was an uncommon when it first came out in the dark. The maze can't produce mana, and instead has tap, untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. 2.5% of EDH decks run it, and it shows up in competitive Legacy in lands decks, where it buys crucial time. It also enables certain combos, and can be a way for you to safely get your attack triggers without having to subject your creature to actual combat. Number 18. Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is an impressive hate piece from MH3. It's the ultimate tax on one of the most powerful mechanics in Magic, casting spells for free. Costing just 1 mana, the Bauble is an artifact that says, whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. It also has pay 1, tap, sack, draw a card. Against many decks, the static ability is crushing. It's a hard counter to the Evoke Elementals, to 0 mana interaction like Force of Negation, Pact of Negation, Force of Despair, and Force of Will, Cascade payoffs such as Crashing Footfalls and Living End, Artifact ramp like Mox Amber, Mox Opal, Lotus Petal, and Lotus Bloom, the Neo brand combo pieces like Allosaurus Rider, Summoner's Pact, and Nourishing Shoal, and of course the Alpha Moxen and Black Lotus, the mana rocks that define Vintage. Indeed, this card was restricted from Vintage due to its impressive power to slow down the game's fastest format and shut down the 0 mana counters that keep it in check. Vexing Bauble was axed from Legacy 2 in December 2024 after lists main decking it began posting alarming win rates. The fact that you can effectively cycle Vexing Bauble when you don't need it significantly lowers its opportunity cost, meaning that many decks can run it in their main board. On top of that, it's a tutorable target for format mainstay Urza's Saga. Number 17. Ancient Tomb. Shockingly, this was originally an uncommon back in Tempest. Ancient Tomb is one of the strongest ramp lands ever, Tapping for 2 colorless at the cost of 2 life is a trade most decks are more than happy to make. In formats like Legacy, that kind of acceleration is easy to capitalize on. Decks like Sneak and Show, Painter, Eldrazi, and various prison strategies rely on Ancient Tomb to deploy their key pieces ahead of schedule and seize control of the game before the opponent can stabilize. Life loss is real, but if you're winning the game faster or locking your opponent out, the damage rarely matters. And in formats like Commander, where tempo and big plays are highly valued, Ancient Tomb continues to shine for the exact same reason. It's arguably the king of the soul lands. Number 16. Sensei's Divining Top. Sensei's Divining Top is one of the most deceptively powerful artifacts in the game's history. It's 1 mana and comes with 2 activated abilities. Pay 1, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order, and tap, draw a card, then put this artifact on top of its owner's library. On paper, it doesn't generate card advantage, but in practice, the level of card selection it provides is so consistent and so repeatable that it often feels like you're always drawing exactly what you need. For just 1 mana, you can continually smooth your draws, dig 3 cards deep, and set up your next turn with precision. Over time, that kind of filtering adds up to a massive advantage, especially in slower formats where games go long. And thanks to its ability to tuck itself on top of your library in response to removal, it's incredibly difficult to interact with. Then there's the combo potential. You can use it to make sure your miracle cards hit, for example, pair it with cards like Mystic Forge and cost reducers such as Foundry Inspector, and top becomes part of a loop that can draw your entire deck. Fleshraker Mud decks in Vintage use this synergy to great effect. The most iconic interaction though is with Counterbalance, an enchantment that says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, counter that spell if it has the same mana value as the revealed card. With top out, it means you can always counter your opponent's 1 mana plays just by putting top back on top of your library and revealing it. Also, whenever your opponent casts any spell, you can use top to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and if any of them share the same mana value as your opponent's spell, you can put that one back on top and counter their spell. It's a brutal soft lock. It's no surprise the card is banned in formats like Legacy and Modern. It slows games down while offering too much consistency, but in Commander and Vintage, it remains very abusable. Number 15. Goblin Recruiter. 1 generic and 1 red for a 1/1 goblin with, when this creature enters, search your library for any number of goblin cards, reveal them, then shuffle and put those cards on top in any order. It's a tribal tutor that gives you an absurd level of control over your draws. You essentially get to script your next several turns, ensuring perfect sequencing of threats, utility creatures, or combo pieces. And when combined with cards like Conspicuous Snoop and Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, it becomes something much more sinister. Recruiter sets up the entire combo from a single card, stacking your deck in a way that leads directly to a deterministic win. That's why it ended up banned in Legacy. The format is notoriously powerful, and it takes something truly exceptional to cross that line. Goblin Recruiter made these strategies too consistent, too fast, and too difficult to interact with. Number 14. Channel. Channel is one of the clearest examples of just how unrestrained early Magic design could be, and it's famous for forming the game's very first combo alongside Fireball. It's 2 green for a sorcery reading. Until end of turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, add 1 colorless mana. So it takes the most expendable resource in the game, life, and converts it directly into one of the most valuable, mana. That kind of exchange is fundamentally broken. The classic Channel Fireball combo is the most famous expression of that power. Pay a huge chunk of life, generate a massive burst of mana, and end the game on the spot. But the card doesn't actually care what you're casting. Any oversized threat or payoff spell becomes absurd when you can deploy it turns ahead of schedule. What makes Channel especially egregious is how little setup it requires. There's no real hoop to jump through, just life total and a payoff. In the game's early days, people were capable of winning the game on turn 1, provided they also had a Black Lotus. Number 13. Demonic Consultation. This instant from Ice Age costs 1 black and says, choose a card name, exile the top 6 cards of your library, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card with the chosen name. Put that card into your hand and exile all other cards revealed this way. So it's a risky tutor that can potentially deck you. Alternatively, you can name a card not in your library to exile your entire deck in one shot. This lends itself to plenty of combo applications. The most famous one is with Thassa's Oracle. The card is restricted in Vintage, where it powers Doomsday decks. It's fairly popular in Commander 2, appearing in more than 3% of decks according to EDHREC. Number 12. Mystical Tutor. Mystical Tutor is the blue member of the Mirage Tutor cycle and is widely considered the best. For 1 blue, it's an instant with search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. It's banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage because it provides 1 mana access to some of the most powerful spells in the game. Crucially, because it's an instant, you can cast it on your opponent's end step, ensuring that the card you tutored for is your very next draw. In Vintage, Mystical Tutor searches up things like Ancestral Recall, Force of Will, Paradoxical Outcome, and Tendrils of Agony. In Commander, it frequently finds the likes of Cyclonic Rift and Teferi's Protection, appearing in almost 12% of all decks on EDHREC. Number 11. Force of Will. Force of Will is one of the defining cards of Eternal Magic, a spell so powerful that entire formats are built with it in mind. It's a counterspell for 5 mana that says, you may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. The option to cast it for free is what makes it extraordinary, fundamentally changing how games play out. It allows blue decks to interact even when tapped out, shutting down combo turns, protecting their own threats, or stopping haymakers before they resolve. In fast formats like Legacy and Vintage, that kind of safety valve is essential. Without it, many strategies would simply be too explosive to keep in line. It's no surprise that Force shows up across a wide range of archetypes, from Delver and Tempo Shells to Control and Artifact-based decks like 8-Cast. It's the second most played card in Legacy, appearing in 48% of all Legacy decks on MTG Top 8. No matter the strategy, the ability to say no at 0 mana is universally valuable. Cards like Force of Negation try to capture that same power while adding restrictions, but Force of Will remains the gold standard. Even in Commander, where card disadvantage matters more, its ability to protect key plays for free keeps it firmly in the conversation. More than just a strong card, Force of Will is a cornerstone of format balance, proof that sometimes the most broken effects are necessary to keep other broken things in check. Number 10. Windfall. Windfall is one of the most powerful wheel effects in Magic, serving as a high-velocity card draw engine that punishes opponents for having full hands while rewarding you for emptying yours. Commander players might just know it as a strong way of restocking hands, but this card was a terror in 60-card formats, emerging as one of the most busted cards during Urza Block's combo winter. It's a way of keeping your hand full while also stocking your graveyard and potentially messing with your opponent's hand. It synergizes powerfully with tons of cards, from Narset Parter of Veils to Hellbreacher to Orcish Bowmasters. The card has long been banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage. Number 9. Mental Misstep. Mental Misstep is one of the most format-warping counterspells ever, and it didn't take long for players to realize just how problematic it was. It costs 1 Phyrexian blue, meaning it can be cast for either 1 blue or 2 life, and it says counter target spell with mana value 1. It's a hard counter that hits a huge portion of Magic's most important cards, but the real issue is that it can be cast for 0 mana by paying life. That completely breaks the normal rules of interaction. You don't need to hold up mana, you don't need to be on the play, you can counter your opponent's first spell before you've even taken a turn. In formats built around efficient 1 mana plays, like cantrips, discard spells, mana dorks, removal, etc., Mental Misstep can be backbreaking. What made it especially egregious was how universally playable it was. You didn't even need to be a blue deck in the traditional sense. Any deck could just pay the Phyrexian cost and gain access to this level of counter magic. That led to formats where nearly every deck was running Misstep, in part just to avoid falling behind to opposing missteps. That kind of homogenization is exactly what gets cards banned, and Mental Misstep earned that fate quickly in both Modern and Legacy. In addition to being strong, the card actively reshapes formats in unhealthy ways, which is why it's remembered as one of the most aggressively oppressive control tools ever printed. Number 8. Strip Mine. Strip Mine is one of the purest examples of efficient land disruption ever printed. It's a land with tap, add 1 colorless mana, and tap, sacrifice this land, destroy target land. For a land slot, you get unconditional land destruction, and whereas Wasteland is limited to only non-basic lands, Strip Mine can hit anything. In other words, this is a very mean card. You give up your land play by sacking it, but your opponent loses any land of your choosing, often setting them back far more than it costs you, especially if you hit a key jewel land or a crucial piece of their mana base or a utility land, and when paired with recursion engines, that 1-for-1 exchange quickly turns into a soft lock that can completely shut opponents out of the game. Strip Mine's strength highlights why modern designs like Ghost Quarter and Field of Ruin look very different. On top of being powerful, having your mana systematically dismantled in uncounterable fashion simply makes for a miserable play experience. The card is understandably banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage. Number 7. Bazaar of Baghdad. This busted land was originally at Uncommon 3 rarity in Arabian Nights. Lacking a mana ability, it instead has tap, draw 2 cards, then discard 3 cards. This ability lets you churn through your library at an incredible rate, which is exactly what graveyard strategies want. Indeed, in dredge decks, Bazaar's discard isn't a cost, but a feature. Replacing draws with dredges lets you fill your graveyard very quickly. The fact that it doesn't produce mana ends up not mattering at all in these shells. When a land effectively draws you multiple cards per turn and fuels your entire strategy, it transcends what lands are normally supposed to do. Number 6. Tinker. Tinker was intended to be a more balanced version of the old card Transmute artifact. Instead, it was even more broken. This sorcery from Urza's Legacy costs 2 generic and 1 blue and says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It essentially converts a piece of junk on your board into the most terrifying artifact in your deck. You sack a cheap artifact and then search for a bomb like Portal to Phyrexia or Blightsteel Colossus to close out the game. Banned in Commander, banned in Legacy, restricted in Vintage. Number 5. Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor lent its name to an entire effect, a testament to its potency. For just 2 mana, you get to search your library for any card and put it directly into your hand. That's ridiculous, explaining why Demonic Tutor is banned in Legacy, restricted in Vintage, and a staple in Commander. In a format like EDH, where decks are singleton and you can't rely on drawing specific cards naturally, that kind of effect is invaluable. Whether you're assembling a combo, finding an answer, or just grabbing your best card for the situation, Demonic Tutor does exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. There are plenty of other powerful tutors, like Imperial Seal, Vampiric Tutor, and Entomb, but each comes with trade-offs. Some cost life, some put the card on top of your library instead of into your hand, and others are more specialized. Demonic Tutor, by contrast, is clean, unrestricted, and universally useful. It's the gold standard for tutoring effects. A card so powerful that every tutor printed since has been measured against it. Number 4. Library of Alexandria. Here's another one that was technically printed at Uncommon in Arabian Nights. Library of Alexandria is one of the most broken lands the game has to offer. The requirement of having exactly 7 cards in hand looks like a meaningful restriction, but it turns out to be trivial to meet, especially early in the game. Play it on turn 1, pass, and suddenly you're drawing an extra card every turn with virtually no cost. That kind of repeatable free card advantage is obviously absurd. The downside is real in the late game, where emptying your hand turns it off, but by then it's usually already done its job. Few cards offer that level of sustained advantage for such a minimal investment. In slower matchups or control mirrors, it can take over the game single-handedly if unanswered. Consequently, Library of Alexandria is banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage, where it frequently appears in blue-white control decks, Jeskai Xerox, and Oath of Druids combo. Number 3. Mana Drain. Mana Drain is widely regarded as one of the most powerful counter spells ever, and it earns that reputation by doing far more than just saying no. For 2 blue mana, it cleanly counters any spell, already a rate that matches Counterspell, but the real payoff comes on your next main phase, where you receive a burst of colorless mana equal to the countered spell's mana value. That swing in tempo is enormous. Not only do you stop your opponent's play, but you immediately convert it into acceleration for yourself. Counter something big, and suddenly you're the one casting a haymaker ahead of schedule, or chaining multiple spells in a single turn. In the early days of Magic, Mana Drain was a little risky because any unused mana would cause mana burn. Since that rule was removed, the card has 0 downside and is purely beneficial. It turns defense into offense in a way very few cards can, which is why it's banned in Legacy. Mana Drain performs well in Vintage as well as Commander. EDH's relatively slower pace and higher mana values mean the payoff is often even bigger, making Mana Drain both a premier counterspell and a ramp spell rolled into one. Number 2. Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp is one of the most infamous design mistakes in Magic history. 1 mana to cast, 1 mana to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. When equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. In playtesting, it originally granted the equipped creature +1/+1, but the designers found the card too strong, so they changed it to granting +1/-1. Rather than nerfing Skull Clamp, this tweak sent it hurtling to the outer reaches of brokenness. It was now a machine for turning small creatures into card advantage, one of the most efficient draw engines in the game. In decks built around cheap creatures or sacrifice outlets, Skull Clamp is overwhelming. Every creature becomes 2 more cards, and suddenly you're drawing through your deck at an insane pace. That's why it dominated every format it touched. In Affinity, it paired perfectly with Arcbound Ravager and other artifact synergies. Bans swiftly followed across a host of formats, including Modern and Legacy. In short, few cards have ever offered so much card advantage for such a low cost. Number 1. Soul Ring. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Soul Ring stands at the top of the pile, perhaps the most powerful uncommon of all time. For a single mana, you get a mana rock that can tap for 2 colorless mana. That rate is so far above the curve that it fundamentally changes how games play out from the very first turn. In Commander, Sol Ring is practically synonymous with the format. It's in almost every deck and enables the kind of crazy starts that define early game momentum. Turn 1 Sol Ring into a 4-drop is a classic play. Of course, that power has sparked plenty of debate. Sol Ring is restricted in Vintage and banned in Legacy for good reason, and many players have questioned whether it's too strong for Commander as well, but at the same time it's become part of the format's identity, much like Brainstorm in Legacy. Love it or hate it, Sol Ring is a defining card. It's simple, efficient, and completely warping in the best and sometimes worst ways. And that's exactly why it's endured for more than 3 decades, even as the game around it has evolved dramatically. That's all for today. Until next time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube. And remember to use my discount code SerumVisions for Card Trader 0.